Well, looks like we're gathered to plumb the depths of the Acts of the Apostles. And I'm ready if you are. I can't believe we've gotten this far in the book of Acts, but we have. We're starting chapter 22 when Paul, rescued from the mob in Jerusalem, is talking to the Roman troop commander. And let's see here. Paul gets his permission to address the crowd. Kind of a risky move, if you ask me. Okay, 22, verse 1. Men, oh boy. Well, this is all Paul, but I just can't do Paul Lynn the whole way. So, okay. Men, brothers, and fathers, hear now my defense before you. Once they heard him speaking in the Hebrew language, they quieted down still more. And he says, I am a Jew, a man born in Tarsus of Cilicia, and brought up in this city, having been trained at the feet of Gamaliel, one of the big rabbis, according to the strictest standard of our ancestral Torah, being a zealot for God, just like all of you today, zealous to the point of persecuting this way to the death, this path, of salvation. And the early Christians, even in Acts, call themselves the way, right? So did the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Zealous to the point of persecuting this way to the death, capital W, manacling and delivering to prison both men and women. Just ask the archpriest and all the council of elders. From them I secured letters and journeyed to the brothers in Damascus, even leading those up there to Jerusalem in bonds to punish them. Scholars differ on whether whether the Sanhedrin in Jerusalem could possibly have given him such orders, because were they empowered to govern things in Syria? Maybe not. But I guess you could say, well, yeah, there's a problem. I mean, the Sanhedrin could send messages to synagogues there without saying, we order you to do it. They could say, well, we got these heretics we're worried about. You should be too, and we're asking your permission to arrest them. Still, I'm not sure they could do that, right? To actually say, okay, we're hauling you in. But anyway, verse 6. Now, it came about that as I was journeying, and I approached Damascus, about midday, a powerful light from the sky encompassed me, and I fell to the ground and heard a voice speaking to me. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And I replied, who are you, Lord? And he said to me, I am Jesus the Nazarene, whom you are persecuting. Now, while my companions did see the light and were terrified, they did not hear the voice of the one speaking to me. This is very much like in Ezekiel chapter 1, when he starts having a vision that no one else can see. And I said, what shall I do, Lord? And the Lord said to me, get up and proceed into Damascus. And there you will be told about everything that has been assigned you to do. And when I stood up, on account of the brilliance of that light, I could not see. So I entered Damascus, led by the hands of my companions. And a certain Ananias, a devout man, observer of the Torah, just like you folks, highly esteemed by all the local Jews, came to me and stood by me, saying, Saul, brother, look up. So at once I looked up at him, and he said to me, The God of our fathers preordained you to know his will and to see the just one and to hear a voice from his mouth, because you will be his witness before all mankind of the things you have seen and heard. And this is interesting. Remember, again and again, we've heard from Peter and Jesus and so on. You're to be my witnesses to all that's been fulfilled among us, and all that I did, Jesus did from the baptism onward. Well, now Paul is commissioned to do the same sort of thing, but to witness about the risen Jesus's involvement in his subsequent ministry. So he's kind of an apostle too, right? In the same way. I mean, he can't say that oh, I'm sorry. He can't say that Paul witnessed all the stuff Jesus did. I mean, if he had seen any of it, it's not clear that he did or didn't. He certainly wouldn't have seen it through sympathetic eyes. So what would his testimony be worth? I don't know. Maybe a lot. Okay. Yeah, 16. And now, what are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, and wash away your sins, invoking his name. There's that hesitation phrase that we find again and again in a baptismal connection. What are you waiting for? Let's get baptized, just like the Ethiopian eunuch, like what Jesus says about don't stop the kids from coming to me, which was the whole thing was really a baptismal text for infants, as Kuhlman argued, and Cornelius, who can prevent these people from being baptized, and so on. Okay. 17, and it came about that when I returned to Jerusalem and was praying in the temple, I passed into an ecstasy, and I saw him speaking to me, hurry, get out of Jerusalem quickly, because they will not welcome your testimony about me. And I said, Lord, they recognize that I used to raid the synagogues, imprisoning and beating those who professed faith in you. And when the blood of your witness Stephen was being spilled, I myself stood there approving and watching over the coats of his murderers. For someone like me to have turned, and he said to me, be on your way, because I will send you far from here to the Gentiles. Okay. They listened up till this last word, then raised their voices, saying, erase such a one from the earth, for he is an abomination against nature. That's kind of interesting in light of the possible Gnostic connection of what it says in 1 Corinthians 15. And finally, as to one born out of time, or like an aborted fetus, he also appeared to me. Is that kind of what's being said here, that he was an abomination against nature? Okay. And as they screamed and ripped their clothes and pitched dust in the air, the commander ordered that he, Paul, be brought into the fortress, commanding that he be interrogated under the lash, so as to find out for sure just what he had done to account for their howling for his blood. But while they were spread-eagling him to tie him with thongs, Paul said to the centurion on duty, tell me if it is legal for you to flog a man, a Roman, convicted of no crime. Once he heard this, that he made himself out to be a Roman, the centurion approached the commander and reported to him, consider carefully what you're about to do, for this man is a Roman. So the commander approached and asked him, tell me, are you a Roman? And he said, yes. And the commander answered, I know how much it cost me to obtain this citizenship. And Paul said, but I have been born a Roman. So at once the interrogators standing around him stepped discreetly away. Even the commander was afraid once he realized he was dealing with a Roman and that he was having him tied to the rack. The next day, it determined to know for sure exactly what the Jews had against him. He released him and ordered a meeting of the archpriests and the whole Sanhedrin, and he brought in Paul and had him stand among them. What does it mean you're a Roman? You mean you're not a Jew? No. He obviously, he's going to temple. He's a Jew. But the point is, he says, yes, but, some Jews are Roman citizens, and I'm one of them. Oh, well, there's certain things we can't do in that case, like beat the truth out of you. So let's just do a little experiment and put you together with your detractors and see, if the truth emerges. Oh, let's go on into chapter 23. Paul, his gaze sweeping the Sanhedrin, said, "Men, brothers, in all good conscience, I've lived before God until this day." And the archpriest Ananias, everybody and his brother in this book is named Ananias, but it was a real common name, directed those flanking him to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, "God is about to strike you, you whitewashed wall. You sit here judging me according to the law, and you transgress the law by commanding me to be struck." And those standing there said, "You dare revile the archpriest of God?" And Paul said, I did not know, brethren, that he is the archpriest of the high priest. In that case, you're right, for it is written, you shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people. Wouldn't want to do anything against the Torah now. This is kind of like in Luke where Jesus is struck during his interrogation. You kind of wonder if this is another instance of the Acts author simply sort of rewriting Jesus' passion narrative, making Paul the star. And and in John, that's the one where Jesus gets socked for what he said. But there's this weird relationship that nobody has been able adequately to define between Luke and John. It kind of looks like the two authors were aware of one another's work at different stages of publication, because sometimes it looks like Luke in its present state is borrowing from John, and sometimes it looks like John is borrowing from Luke. Well, it's not that odd if each was reading the other's work as it was in the works. Paul, mindful that one faction of the Sanhedrin is composed of syndics, or Sadducees, councilmen. I mean, this is the council they're part of. Right? But the other of Pharisees cried out in the Sanhedrin, "Men, brothers," I shouldn't. Well, okay, yeah, I guess I can. It's not all Paul. Cried out in the Sanhedrin, "Men, brothers, I am a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees, and it is on account of the hope for the resurrection of the dead that I'm on trial today." What? And as he said this, a conflict arose between the Pharisees and the syndics, Sadducees, and a schism opened up in the group. That's just what Paul was angling for, right? For the syndics say there is no resurrection nor afterlife as either an angel or a spirit, but the Pharisees confessed faith in both. And there was a shouting match, and some of the scribes who sided with the Pharisees jumped to their feet and argued vehemently, saying, "We find this man guilty of nothing evil. What if a spirit or an angel did speak to him on the Damascus road?" Verse 10, and as the discord was rising to a fever pitch, the commander feared that Paul might be torn limb from limb by them, and commanded the troops to intervene and escort him out of their midst and into the fortress. And the next night, the Lord came to him and said, "Brace up, for just as you earnestly testified to the facts about me in Jerusalem, So you must also bear witness in Rome. Ooh, that's the next step. It's being revealed to him. When dawn came, the Jews entered into a conspiracy, swearing an oath neither to eat nor to drink till they had killed Paul. Uh-oh. That kind of motivates you to get it done quick, right? 13, and there were over 40 who entered into this compact. They approached the archpriests and the elders and said, "We swore an oath to taste nothing until we succeed in killing Paul, or may God kill us. Now, therefore, you, together with the Sanhedrin, request of the commander that he bring him down to you, so that you may examine his case more closely." Yeah, and by the time he comes near, we will be ready to kill him. And the son of Paul's sister, like Darth Vader in one of the sequels, saying, "A sister." Right? And the son of Paul's sister heard the treachery. Then, coming to the fortress and gaining entrance, he reported it to Paul. And Paul, calling one of the centurions over, said, "Bring this youth up to the commander, for he has something to report to him." So taking him, he brought him up to the commander and says, "The prisoner Paul called me over and asked me to bring this young man to you with something to tell you." And taking hold of his hand, the commander took him aside privately and asked, "What is it you have to report to me?" And he said, "The Jews agreed to request that you bring Paul down to the Sanhedrin, as if they wanted to make more specific inquiries about him. But do not be taken in by them, for more than 40 men are there lying in wait for him, who have placed themselves under a curse, neither to eat nor to drink until they kill him. And now they stand ready, just waiting for your promise." So the commander dismissed the young man with a pat on the head and a lollipop. Just kidding. Ordering him to divulge to no one, quote, "that you reported these things to me." Doesn't want to forewarn him. And summoning a certain pair of centurions, he told them, "Have your 200 soldiers ready to journey as far as Caesarea, together with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen, as of the 3rd hour of the night, with mounts standing by for Paul, so they may take him safely to Felix the governor." Right? It's not that he has a special fondness for Paul. He's just saying, look, we can't let these guys do vigilante justice and assassinate this guy. He is a Roman soldier, and we don't really know what the problem is here. What is it that's, what's the bee in their bonnet about this guy? Okay. And verse 25, and he wrote a letter to this effect: "Claudius Lysias, to the most excellent governor Felix, greetings. This man was arrested by the Jews and about to be killed by them when I, coming on the scene with my troops, rescued him, learning that he is a Roman, and determined to ascertain the exact nature of their accusation, I brought him down to their Sanhedrin, where I found that he was accused over questions of their law, but charged with no crime worthy of death or even of chains." I mean, not in our law, that is, and when it was revealed to me that there was a plot against the man, at once I sent word to you, also commanding his accusers to make their case before you. So you see, even the Romans know that these nasty charges against Christians like Paul have no foundation whatsoever. So if anybody starts telling you nasty rumors about Christians, you'll know not to act on them. It's a lot of baloney. Okay, verse 31. Therefore, the soldiers, according to their assigned duty, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. And the next day, allowing the horsemen to go on with him, the soldiers returned to the fortress. When the horsemen entered Caesarea, they delivered the letter to the governor and also presented Paul to him. Reading it, he asked Paul which province he belonged to and learned from Cilicia. 35, I will hear you, he said, when your accusers get here too. And he commanded that he be kept in the praetorium of Herod. I'm going to reserve 24 for next time. You see, all of this stuff where the Romans are so sympathetic to Paul and intervening on his behalf, saving him from danger. This has led some people to speculate that actually Paul is working for the Romans as a kind of a insider agent because they're suspicious of the Christians. And I mean, their leader was crucified as an insurgent, right? So they claim not to have political ambitions, but maybe we better keep an eye on them. And what better way to do that than to have one of our agents in their midst? Now, and that was Paul. Now, that's not out of the question. It's not some loony hypothesis. I don't find it convincing, but it is plausible, right? It's not nuts. And for one thing, it wouldn't, even if it were true, it would not mean Paul was not a sincere Christian convert, right? Because all he is, he'd probably be happy at the opportunity, because if he knows that Christians are nothing to be afraid of, well, he's quite happy to put it on the record. Yeah, I've seen nothing that justifies nasty rumors about them. And Paul's position, not being a revolutionist, is really no different than it would have been when he was a non-Christian Pharisee, because they said, look, you got to accommodate yourself to the real world. Why did we have the disastrous war against Rome back in 6 AD with Judas of Galilee leading the parade? And then in 70, the same thing happened again. He said it's because some people just couldn't stand being part of the Roman Empire. But look what happens. How many more people do you want to have to die for that false hope? Better to make an accommodation with them. They're willing to make compromises for Jews. We don't have to be in the Roman army. We don't have to actually sacrifice to Caesar. They understand that other people's religions don't have a problem with that, but that ours does, and they're going to take that into account. Well, that's all Paul would be doing. He's not some sort of traitor or turncoat or double agent. If the hypothesis is true, I'm saying. I'm not so sure that it is, but if it were, it isn't quite as subversive and debunking as it may sound. Oh, Paul was just a fake. No, that's not a necessary implication at all. So I just want to get that out of the way. But he is going to get his hearings, many of them, in fact. Okay, so let's take a look at our questions. Dirk saith hello. Stephen Griffith says hi. Richard says good afternoon. Graham Pong, what's up, y'all? Thanks a bunch, gents. And right back at you. Yeah, let's see. So, question. Igor Gorecki, what is there about Paul, the Paul and Josephus connection? And I'm falling back a couple of minutes with the live broadcast. Sorry. You're getting it with a delay. I'm not sure I get you, but what the heck? There are two possibilities here. One is that of my friend and colleague Ralph Ellis, who says that Paul was Josephus, or Josephus was Paul, and he amasses this long list of astonishing similarities between the biography, as much as we hear of it in Acts, and the autobiography of Josephus. And a whole lot of things, especially relating to a sea voyage to Rome and what happened during it, and a lot of stuff. It is quite striking. For my part, I tend to think that the two are not the same individual. There are various reasons for that, but Ralph opened my eyes to the possibility that just as the conversion story of Paul is purely literary, not really biographical at all, because it's based obviously on 2nd Maccabees chapter 3 and Euripides the Bacchae, seems equally likely that all of the post-conversion biography of Paul, story of Paul, that corresponds so amazingly to that of Josephus is simply copied from the autobiography of Josephus afterward. And that's a more modest hypothesis, but preserves Ralph's eagle eye scrutiny of the similarities between the two documents. Yeah, okay. Just a man from the past. We get Paul Lynde anyway, because I'm not doing the whole Pauline speech in Paul Lindy's, but where he's quoting himself, I figure why not? Yeah. Hallelujah. Okay. And just a man from the past. These are the kinds of strange tongues they meant people would speak in. Paul Lindy's, Willem Dafoe's, and so forth. Hallelujah. Okay. And he goes on to say, just a man from the past, Law and Order Jerusalem. In the Christian persecution system, the mob is represented by two separate yet equally important groups: the Jews that make up charges and the Romans that beat the hell out of you. Yeah, I guess so. What, good cop and bad cop? Yeah. Ooh, all right. Wait a minute. Okay. Just a man from the past replies to Igor Gorecki. I was a few minutes late too, but it helps to put the video playback on double speed until you catch up. Oh, and you thought I've talked fast otherwise. Yeah. Igor says, great idea. Just a man from the past. What do you think of the higher naivete espoused by Yale classicist Donald Kagan? He believes anything the ancients wrote unless it is physically illogical / impossible or completely contradictory. I don't think that's wise, particularly. It's almost like one strange version. I think the guy's name is Stephen Davis, an evangelical who doesn't believe in inerrancy. He admits there are too many contradictions and so forth there for that. But he says we ought to believe it's true unless there's reason to say that it isn't. That strikes me as damn peculiar. Isn't it more like if you've got a witness on the stand and there are holes in his story, that kind of tends to discredit the whole thing, right? Because even the stopped watch is right twice a day. So I can't see that. I mean, the basic principle seems to be we don't have any other definitive evidence, so we don't know any better than what we're being told here, so we might as well accept that as fact until we know better. Give it the benefit of the doubt. And I said, that's not what you're doing. You're giving it the benefit of faith. You just have to remain agnostic if it's something that might be true, but who knows? Very good question. I hate it on TV when interviews are going on, and every time somebody is asked a question, the first words out of their mouth are, that's a good question. Just answer the darn thing. Come on. Anyway, um, but occasionally there is an exceptionally good question, and that's one of them. And all of yours are good. I mean, just the kind of crap you see on TV. Okay, we already did this one. What's the matter with me? Um, hmm, hmm. Well, that's all the questions, but I don't want to end too quickly, so I think I will avail myself of the opportunity to read you an article I wrote on Saturday about the Acts chapter 16. It's based on ideas I had while I was going through it on the Bible Geek. So let's see if I can do this. Wait a minute. Yeah, okay, that'll work. Yeah, okay. It's called Lydia, Maenad, Prophetess, Pythoness. And it will appear probably a little bit more proofread in the Journal of Higher Criticism. Wait a sec. Hold on. Oh, wait a minute here. For some reason, I can't dredge it up. Let's see. Let me try again. Okay, let's see. This ought to do it, I guess. Now, when we think we have spotted inconsistencies in a passage of Scripture, we have learned better than to try to harmonize them, asking instead if perhaps the text in question is composite, the result of layering, and that the tale has grown in the telling. In this way, we may understand the conflicting elements on the analogy of the growth rings of a tree. You might call it dendrological criticism, but I won't mind if you don't. In the present article, I want to engage in such an analysis of Acts chapter 16, the episodes of Paul, Lydia, and the pagan oracle possessed by or possessing a python spirit analogous to the pre-Islamic Kahines, who received secret information from the roaming jinn or genies, who in their wanderings picked up like magpies all manner of obscure information. For example, the location of Saul's father's missing oxen. In short, I will suggest that the Acts author has split the female character into two: the Christian convert Lydia and the oracle mongering Pythoness. This narrative strategy, despite the redactional purpose, has resulted in the oddity that Paul is mightily irritated by the woman's incessant proclamation that all should embrace Paul's gospel preaching. Why on earth does he tell her to stop? I've wondered this many times. How about you? Lillian Portafy was dissatisfied with the conventional scholarly position that Acts and the Bacchae of Euripides merely reflect common Hellenistic literary/religious tropes, such as miraculous prison escapes and unrecognized gods in human guise. She demonstrated quite compellingly that wait a second here, that Acts offers numerous significant parallels with the Bacchae because it has borrowed the common elements from Euripides' much earlier and widely known play. Dennis R. MacDonald points out further striking parallels / borrowings from the Bacchae in John's Gospel, too. Both Acts and John feature scenes in which the divine emissary, Paul in the one case, Jesus in the other, appears defiantly before a pagan tyrant who has arrested him and threatens to execute him. The divine emissary disdains his captor's arrogant warnings as the vain cackling of a bantam rooster. It is the prisoner, quote unquote, who is the real master of the situation. Likewise, Saul has been persecuting and executing Christians until the risen Jesus appears to him, while Saul is engaged in one of his trademark search and destroy missions, and tells him it is really he, Jesus, whom he is persecuting, precisely as in Matthew 25, right? And so much as you've done to the least of these, my brethren, you've done it unto me. Thus, the roles are reversed. Jesus is the authority, not Saul. And a bit later, Jesus informs Ananias of Damascus that having witnessed how Saul is expert in dishing out the suffering, Jesus will soon turn the tables on him by assigning him missionary work which will have him flogged, stoned, etc. Yes, he can dish it out, but can he take it in? There's a definite note of vengeful irony in Jesus' words. Which is like, I will show him how much he must endure for my name. Yes, wait a minute. There's a definite note of vengeful irony in Jesus' words, recalling when Dionysius comments that the hypnotically converted Pentheus, persecutor of Dionysius's followers, the Maenads, winds up being slaughtered by them. It seems that Paul has no more say in the matter of conversion than Pentheus did, and the conversation in both cases will result in a death sentence. In Acts 16, the Philippian jailer is ostensibly the one in authority over Paul and Silas, his incarcerated prisoners. But by means of an earthquake, just as the jailed Dionysius is freed from the cell where Pentheus is confined him, Paul and Silas are liberated by an earthquake and are suddenly made masters of the situation, commuting the self-assigned penalty of the jailer who fears he will be executed for letting his prisoners escape. Paul tells him all will be well, and the jailer too converts to the faith he once persuaded, he once persecuted, not by his own choice, but as representing those who do persecute the apostles. It's the same actantial role. Let's see. In the Bacchae, we read of how Pentheus sends soldiers to spy on the Maenads of Dionysus who have camped out beyond the city limits, dancing and prophesying, their locks alight with Pentecostal tongues of fire, as in Acts 2. And then a bit later, the now converted Pentheus himself sneaks over to observe the festivities, but is recognized and killed. I cannot help thinking this episode is the basis for Acts 16, where Paul goes outside the city of Philippi to a place of prayer. That is an open-air synagogue of sorts, down by the riverside, composed exclusively of women. He meets no resistance when he preaches his gospel to the gals. Lydia then offers hospitality to Paul, a la Mark so-and-so, whoever gives a cup of water to one of my one who bears the name of Christ will not lose his reward. Here, Paul begins as a copy of Pentheus, but ends up as Dionysus. Dionysus is evangelizing apostle of the new cult, in this case, Christianity. So this much of Acts 16 is based on Euripides. All women in the cult meeting outside the city. Let's see. And Lydia must have been prophesying like Euripides' Maenads. Next, we shift gears to the episode of Paul silencing the python as his evangelistic preaching. Let's assume for a moment that her character has been rewritten in Christian terms, just like the rest of the Euripidean material reappearing in Acts. This is the second stage, the first being the Bacchae original period. In this second stage, we had Lydia portrayed as one of the order of consecrated virgins / widows who lived independently of husbands and domestic duties. First, as in 1 Corinthians. In the 2nd century, when Acts was written, such women lived together communally, usually live-in guests of a wealthy patroness, analogous to the later abbess of a convent. Let's see, Acts 16 has Lydia describe herself as pledged, implying membership in this community of inspired virgins. The pastoral epistles most likely share the same author as Luke Acts, and this writer took a dim view of the charismatic women in their ministry. He warns against women teaching Gnostic heresies, such as we find in the Hypostasis of the Archons. Quote, I do not allow woman to teach to have originated, literally authored, authentane, men. I don't allow women to teach that women originated men, as in the Hypothesis of the Archons. He insists that widow communities be eliminated as anything but relief agencies, poorhouses, a la Acts 5, their distribution centers for food donations. This author several times demonstrates his antipathy toward females prophesying. Luke 2 originally must have portrayed the aged prophetess Anna, not the male Simeon, singing the Nunc Dimittis, one of the canticles. As the text now reads, it introduces Anna as being over 100 years old, which is pointless except to explain the business in the canticle about having lived just long enough to see the birth, if not the career, of the Messiah. But the author does not want women to prophesy, so let's give her lines to Simeon. It is a classic case of the redundancy principle, whereby the original star of the show has been shoved aside, yielding the spotlight to a new hero. The original star is vestigially retained, but in the background. Thus, for instance, originally, The Audience with Pharaoh by Moses and Aaron featured only the elders of Israel. Let's see. When Moses, then Aaron, who in turn edges out Moses, reflecting the ascension of the priests over the scribes, the elders were shoved aside. At first, it must have been Nadab and Abihu who feasted with Yahweh atop Sinai, but when the new favorites, Moses and Aaron, replaced them, Nadab and Abihu were still invited, but a la Luke 14, they have been told to go down lower, leaving the seat of honor to the others. Okay. Another such instance in Acts is the now pointless introduction of the daughters of Philip, who were prophesying virgins, quote unquote, who, however, do not get to prophesy. Instead, the male prophet Agabus has been flown in at the last minute from Acts chapter 11 to deliver the doom oracle about Paul's ominous fate. Agabus is said to bind himself in Paul's belt to act out his prediction, but this too was more appropriate to prophesying virgins, as we see in the Testament of Job, where Job's daughters don prophetic girdles before speaking in the languages of angels. Surely you can see the pattern. And just as the revelation of John stigmatizes Jezebel as an avatar of the great harlot Babylon, the Acts author risks blaspheming the Holy Spirit by making her divinely inspired proclamation in a wait a second. Instead to be the words of Beelzebul. Let's see here. I got to do a little editing. But in that case, why not change the content of her utterance? Perhaps, something you'd expect a demon to say, because she was thinking of how he had followed. The author was thinking how he had followed Mark as depicting the heckling demons, as if they were speaking out of turn, proclaiming the truth about Jesus. We know who you are, Jesus of Nazareth, the Son of God Most High. Likewise, remember from the pastorals, as one of their own poets has said, so-and-so, this is a true saying. That's an odd one, right? Even though it's from a source you wouldn't expect, it's true nonetheless. Let's see here. One final analogy, if you please. I think that Acts chapter 16 might be compared to the fragile scrolls discovered amidst the volcanic ashes of Herculaneum. They were pretty much melted shut by the volcanic heat that incinerated the city. How then could these corpses of texts be persuaded to yield up their secrets? Amazingly, scholars developed a method of X-raying the scrolls, enabling them to be read, even rolled up. Likewise, we have before us a biblical text that clutches its secrets, but we may employ the X-ray vision of our critical methods to lay bare their hitherto lost answers. Okay. So you never know what's going to come out of the Acts thing. So let's see. We do have some more questions in the meantime. This is good. Vesna says hi. Jacques Mar, I guess, M-A-R-E. What are the chances that Titus had offered Josephus his life in exchange for writing the story of the Jewish Messiah as propaganda to soften its character and make it more pro-Roman? Well, that's assuming that you find it likely that Josephus wrote the Gospels, which I think... oh boy, I'm blanking. Joe Atwill suggested, but I don't quite find that plausible. Just a Man from the Past says that part about telling the prophetess off is very odd, and I see some parallels with the disciples telling an exorcist to stop working their side of the street, but now Jesus isn't there to rebuke him. The other article I wrote called The Adventure of the Ephesian Wild Man deals with that. It's going to be fun. Oh yeah, Jacques goes on to say, and that Paul was paid to actively propagate this idea as religion. It could be, but I don't really see any evidence for that. He sure went through hell of a series of beatings. If any of that is true, I wonder if he would have thought it was worth the money. Peter Rabbit says, I'm leaning toward Jesus faking his death and resurrection. Do you believe the guys in white at the tomb were Essenes? No, I think that's just mythological coloring. But I have to say, it's an ingenious theory promoted by Hugh Schoenfield. But it seems to me a little too rationalistic. It makes a bit more sense to me as just part of the furniture of an ancient apotheosis narrative. But, I don't know that for sure. Yeah. Another from Peter. What's the argument of apologists about the we narrative? Do you believe the we narrative was by different authors? Nah, they say, well, it's obviously somebody's autobiographical reporting, and it must have been taken from a personal journal somebody wrote and just inserted here instead of writing it up from scratch pointlessly. But that doesn't seem typical of the way anybody in the New Testament reproduces source material. And I think it's much more plausible because it doesn't have the disadvantage of what I just said. I think Vernon Robbins' theory is just so appealing that this was a literary convention from the Odyssey on. When you're recounting a sea voyage narrative, for some reason, it's to make it more vivid so you can smell the salt air and feel the spray of the waves hitting you in the face and so on. You can feel the swordfish leaping aboard the ship and skewering you in the gut or whatever. And so we did this. All is as it was, as the old TV show used to say. Only you are there. And in almost all the cases in Acts, sure enough, the we business is restricted to the bounding main or somebody on their way to it. There's a couple of exceptions, but that seems to be a clear case of editorial fatigue, where the guy was just nodding and forgot to the Acts author just forgot to switch at the right point in a couple of cases. Okay, that does bring us to the end of the hour, and I pretty much, and I am mighty happy to have you enlightening me and each other again this time. And I'll see you tonight at 6 for the Bible Geek, and then of course tomorrow at noon again for the next chapter of Acts.